Thank you, Gursimran. Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of Sphere India Academy and Sphere India's Protection Sector Committee, we welcome you all to the webinar today. I hope I'm clear and audible. In times of crisis, protection must guide every humanitarian decision is what we believe in Sphere India. And this session will explore how we identify urgent and long-term needs, preventive risks, and coordinate rights-based inclusive responses. And in today's session specifically, as we have planned this as a series of sessions focusing on different marginalized groups, today's session we are focusing on person with disabilities. And we aim to look at strategies that reduce vulnerabilities, build resilience, and ensure no one is left behind. And in today's webinar, we'll have 4 speakers in total. One among that is our moderator, Dr. Heena. And I would like to give a small introduction of Dr. Heena before I hand it over to her for the moderation. And Dr. Heena is a program officer, Humanitarian Response and Change Alliance. And she's a seasoned humanitarian and disaster risk management professional with over 17 years of experience, including 12 years of dedicated principled humanitarian action and implementation of humanitarian standards across disaster and emergency context. As the program officer in Change Alliance, she leads strategic efforts to program management, project management, advocacy and capacity building. Dr. Hejazi has successfully managed multi-sectoral interventions in India, Nepal, Bangladesh, and Kenya, spanning emergency response, resilient building, recovery, gender and DRR, psychosocial support, SRH in emergencies, health emergency preparedness, and child protection. She has worked with leading organizations including ActionAid, ICRC, UNFPA, WHO, IPPF, Sphere India, and Pragya, driving inclusive and rights-based approach in humanitarian action. I'll introduce myself. I'm Kripa Lakshmi. I am the focal point of protection sector and health sector at Sphere India. I am very glad to introduce my senior here into this webinar as a moderator. I'm handing it over to her. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kripa, and thanks to Sphere India for initiating the first in a series of a topic which is very sensitive topic and very important topic, which will come as a series of other topics. Am I audible, Kripa?
Yes, ma'am, you're loud and clear. Please go ahead.
So this is the first in a series which will come, as Krupa was saying, under the Protection Sector Committee. We'll have a host of topics and issues and themes that we will be talking about. But today we have selected a very critical, a very sensitive theme, which is on inclusive protection in emergencies, particularly vis-a-vis perspectives to understand the perspectives of the persons with disabilities. Very privileged to be a part of this important discourse. I warmly welcome all the panelists, all the practitioners, all the technical experts, and the advocates on protection, and specifically who have worked and deep dived into the disability components of the work. I would like to start with acknowledging the contributions of Sphere's core belief that all people affected by crisis have a right to life with dignity, and that all possible steps must be taken to alleviate suffering in these crises. Without an understanding of the protection needs, the preparedness aspects, and the participation of one and all, especially those often less visible in a crisis, we cannot claim to be supporting dignity and rights on an impartial basis. During emergencies, do we systematically ensure inclusion of the most vulnerable, the marginalized, especially if these are people with disabilities? Let's reflect, let's ponder on this very important question. I'm sure we all agree that impacts of crises are exacerbated for those with disabilities during breakdown of economies, social support, insecurity, destruction of infrastructure, displacements, inaccessible services. What can we do, and what do we need to do in such situations? What are some of the barriers, and how can we institute some approaches whereby we become the enablers, especially during evacuations, joint assessments, camp coordination, camp management, cash based interventions, responses related to food, livelihood, nutrition, education, protection, wash. Our technical experts, our practitioners, our advocates, very well educated people who have distilled knowledge on the subject today are going to delve deeper into some of these aspects to help us cull out some actionable recommendations and explore the integration of disability inclusive approaches into humanitarian action, DRR planning, and emergency response. I represent an organization which is committed to promoting dignity, basic rights, and justice of every person. We are signatory to the Inclusion Charter and the Charter on Inclusion of Persons with Disabilities in Humanitarian Action. Both were developed during the World Humanitarian Summit to support our drive towards a strengthened, inclusive agenda across our programs, policy, and advocacy strands, and to ensure that no one is left behind. We're also the signatories of the Charter for Change, a key legacy document coming out of the Global Disability Summit. We have made individual commitments in line with our experience on disability inclusion. During our experience of working on the ADCAP, which is the Age and Disability Capacity Building Program, we joined a consortium of technical and non technical agencies to review organizational practices, capacity building needs, and technical challenges and implementation through resource support and peer learning. And that's how we all actively contributed towards developing the humanitarian inclusion standards, which offer guidance to ensure inclusion of elderly people and people with disabilities in humanitarian contexts, affirming their rights to access, safety, and dignity in humanitarian responses. Handicap International, HelpAge, and a whole lot of other organizations were a part of that consortium and supported the ADCAP consortium in building these indicators. I'm sure all our technical experts are going to unravel and give us more insights into these standards and some of the barriers, some of the enablers. But let me take this moment to invite and introduce our first panelist, Mr. Puneet Singh Singhal, who's going to tell us more about demystifying the protection needs, identifying the barriers and exclusion faced by persons with disability, with a focus on invisibility in response systems. Mr. Puneet Singh Singhal is the convener of the Billion Strong. Puneet Singh Singhal is a disability rights advocate and an accessibility professional. He is a co-founder of Billion Strong, an organization working towards empowering persons with disabilities globally. He is a person with dyspraxia and stuttering. He is working at the intersection of disability, climate change, rampant inhumane urbanization, and mental health. Recognized by Forbes for his efforts in workplace inclusion, Puneet was also honored with the Commonwealth Innovation Award 2023 for his contribution to disability inclusion worldwide. We feel honored to have you with us, Puneet. Please take over the floor. I'm handing over the floor to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Hannah. And first of all, I would like to thank Spare India and Spare India Academy for organizing such an important uh, conversation, because uh, these conversations and these discussions are very important in order to reach towards the solution. And talking about my work. Uh, Working with the disability community for years, and then coming from the community itself, I have realized that how disability community is disproportionately affected by the different many manifestations of climate change. So we generally talk about natural disasters, we generally talk about wars, uh, and all of these things. And also I've realized that some of the things which also affect us is factors like heat wave, which we have started to normalize already. It's been, I don't know, but since like 4 or 5 years the heat wave has intensified a lot, and we are somehow learning to cope. But we often forget that how disabled people, neurodivergent people, chronically ill people and caregivers suffer on a whole different level, and on so many different aspects that we cannot even imagine. So when the weather was changing, starting from November 2024, I started to interview a lot of people, and from the disability community itself, from places like from the cities of North India, where the heat wave are very intense. So I started to interview 30 odd individuals from different class of society. Some were students, some were working professionals, some were elders, and I realized that how these challenges were different very different in nature, yet so similar in how it got attached to not only survival but also the dignity of that person. We just most of the time we just talk about how we can protect ourselves on a very basic level, but generally when we talk to the person, we also feel that there is a lack of respect and lack of dignity in the whole conversation. That autonomy that person always want as a human being is somehow lacking. So talking about all of these things, I would like to specify some examples that came in the conversation. For example, uh, I met this boy called Ankur. So all these names have changed because of the privacy issues, and somehow people don't want to be named. So I have changed the names. And Ankur came from the part called Khyala in West Delhi. So Khyala is an urban village in West Delhi, and he talked about his own autism and sensory processing disorders, where heat wave was making him very difficult to go out and actually go out to college and even buy the daily groceries and all of these things. So he said that this heat feels like needle on my skin, and the noise from the traffic is so louder, the smell is so strong, I feel like I am dissolving. It feels like I'm not there. I'm so numb in this all of these traffic and heat, and the kind of struggle he was putting up, because he said that public space never felt safe. And when he said safe, he said about it's not accessible, it's not inclusive. And also, we need to realize that Delhi's heat index is climbing steadily year after year. We are just realizing how hot it is, and it is not even May. So we have to understand that sensory environment. People who have sensory processing disorders, or they are sensitive towards that. This is very, very, very non-livable for them. So, during our call, he showed that his schedule, that he leaves home after 9 p.m. Because it's better than, so whenever he used to buy the medical, all of these things, he makes sure that it's late in the evening or even at night, because in the daytime he cannot go out. And it takes me back to the research, that according to 2022 report of International Disability Alliance, only 39 countries out of 195 has made any reference to persons with disability in their climate plans. It's so unimaginable that the largest minority of the world is being neglected while talking about climate change. I repeat, only 39 countries out of 195, and India's own nationally determined contribution have never mentioned accessibility or inclusive heat resilience. So, on the global level, we have been marginalized, we have been neglected, and on Indian level as well, we have not been discussed yet. So just talking about Delhi. So Delhi has a heat action plan which focuses largely on early warnings, which focusing on establishing cooling centers. But most of these cooling centers, be it schools, hospital, community halls, are not physically accessible. So we are already leaving behind a big percentage of our pollution, of our population. And also there is no mention of sign language alerts, there is no mention of sensory safe cooling zones, and no coordinated support for disabled people during peak heat events. There is also very little accessibility for uh, how things are being done, and also very little accountability on how these plans were rolled out in the low income neighborhood. I myself come from a slum in Delhi, and I have totally seen and witnessed and observed and felt how disabled people are already underserved in these kind of low income neighborhoods. Talking about another woman, Tanya, a blind woman in her late 30s, from East Delhi, recalled that how she was left behind during a emergency evacuation by a fire triggered by electrical overload. So, in East Delhi, it's very dense. If people are, if people understood the whole geography of Delhi, East Delhi is already very crowded, very dense, and for the help to reach, the ambulance and all the fire brigade to reach in the densely populated low income areas of East Delhi is very difficult already. So she said that I was left behind during that emergency evacuation, and she said that everyone ran. I don't know what happened until a neighbor came to help me. There was no warning, there was no protocol, it was nothing. And if there was, if the neighbor wouldn't have come to help her, I don't know what would have been happened to me. So I think these real experiences of people, who have lived experience of how they are coping up with heat wave, which we generally don't talk about, which is a itself is a very, it's kind of a natural, I don't know if it is a natural, it comes under natural disaster or the man-made one, because we have done significant destruction to our planet. But it is somehow, we need to understand that even heat wave is a disaster on its own, and we are just normalizing these things because we are not talking about these things. So overall, I would say that these disasters, doesn't discriminate, but our responses do, because these emergencies, they disproportionately affect persons with disability due to systemic neglect in planning and response. We all know that we have been talking about that there are over 1 billion people globally live with disabilities, yet less than 20% of humanitarian response explicitly address their needs. I'm talking about the UN flagship report on disability and development 2018. And in that same report, a disability inclusive disaster risk uh, was was there, but it is the most under implemented target. So I think, we have to think about disaster planning as not a reactive thing, but it should be designed with persons with disability, not for them. I'm only repeating what the disability activists and advocates have been telling us for years. Uh, Talking about, inaccessibility in disaster management system, I would say that there is some completely lack of physical communication and attitudinal accessibility. For example, the older shelters and evacuation routes are inaccessible for wheelchair users. There is absence of sign language interpretation during these emergency broadcast, which endangers deaf community. Lack of easy to read formats and alternative communication shut out neurodivergent and intellectually disabled people with vital information. We need to understand that how emergency protocol must include universal design principles and mandate for accessible communication. And we also need the funding And we also need to ensure that all of these policies and frameworks must be enforced with great diligence and care. I also got to know that, during my own research and interviews, that these neglect can even cause abuse. For example, I'm pointing out that during emergencies, persons with disability face heightened risk of abuse, neglect, and exploitation, especially in overcrowded or poorly maintained shelters. We have multiple reports of how women and girls with disabilities are 2 to 4 times more likely to experience sexual violence, especially in conflict or displacement settings. I'm talking to WHO 2020, 2014 report. Institutionalization often increases post disaster, you know, uh, I would say post disaster, some kind of neglect which causes, various kind of violence and harassment. Despite there are some obligation, there are CRPD, which promotes independent living, but how these are being enforced, we are reading, and we are also getting to know from different kind of news that how the institutions are not safe itself. So I've been asking, through my report, through my limited communication to the policymakers, to the decision makers, that protection frameworks in emergencies must explicitly include disability focused safeguarding mechanism. We need a community based support models, and we need independent compliant redress systems as well. Because climate emergencies compound disability exclusion. We need to understand that how not only heat waves, how floods, droughts, and cyclones are not environmental crises, they are accessibility crises as well. I repeat, India's 2022 heat action plan does not mention disability in a single directive. During the cyclone Fani, disabled people were largely excluded from evacuation drills and temporary shelter planning. I'm talking about the CBM India review. So, the solution is very, it looks very simple, but somehow the implementation is it's complicated in a country like India, or for that reason the whole our uh, region called South Asia. It's very complicated because uh, disability data is somehow lacking. We don't have the data, and if since we don't have the data, we cannot plan accordingly. So, we need to have proper data so that we can implement all these climate adaptation and the early warning systems with inclusive foresight. Bef- Without data, without proper uh, tracking of the numbers, it's very difficult to, somehow we are shooting in the dark. And talking about the meaningful participation, I would say that the most effective protection mechanism is ensuring that disabled people are in the leadership position themselves, because lived experience is so important, because we realize how difficult it can be. For example, I would like to point out Bangladesh Disability Inclusive DRR Network, which include organizations, DPOs in national and local disaster planning committees, resulting in good results, resulting in higher survival and safe rehabilitation post access post flooding. So I think Bangladesh Disability Inclusive DRN Network is a very good example how we can do things, and how we can embed uh, disability organizations in these early warning committees, in these relief distribution planning and reconstructing assessment. As we say always, that disability community, that nothing about us without us. And talking about the community is very important. Since I've been talking about the leaders should come from the community, I think it's very important that we have local networks, local disabled led networks, because they act faster than the institutional centralized actors. For example, in Kerala floods 2018, disability groups created real-time maps of accessible relief centers and coordinated medical aid. This is a prime example of how disabled-led organizations can lead, forefront, because they know, they understand how things are. So I would say that, we can fund and train more self-advocates, more peer responders, as community-based emergency coordinators. And also, we talk about technology a lot. We always talk about, that technology and is an enabler, but also we need to think about if it is inclusive. We need to say, and I'm very afraid and sad to say that most of the tech platforms and alert systems often fail the accessibility test. The government apps and SMS alerts are not screen reader compatible. Visual only information leave blind or low vision persons behind. So all of these emergencies, I think these technology based solutions should pass and must pass accessibility audits before they roll out. We always talk about AI, we talk about drones, we talk about mobile alerts. All these must be accessible by design, and this is not there. Somehow the laws are there, the implementation is the key. We need more stringent, I would say, implementation of India's RPWD Act and also the Disaster Management Act of 2005, because we should include provision for inclusion as well. For example, I propose that there should be a integrated disability inclusive indicator in the state disaster management authority themselves. That how we need to think about how decentralized it is. Maybe in the villages we can have all of these disaster management performance metrics on the panchayat level itself. We need to be very careful when we centralize all of these things, because they reach to the grassroots level. They reach to the point where these calamities are happening very late. So I think we need to be very strong from bottoms up. We need to create accountability cells within all of these management authorities to track their inclusion commitments already. I think to conclude, I would say that preparedness is very important, and again repeating it, that inclusion should ensure dignity as well. It's about survival. It's about, yes, we must save lives, but dignity is also very important. So we should give the voice, the mic to the disabled community themselves, in the rural communities, to the marginalized communities themselves, to the people who have not been listened and heard lately. We know all of these things, how they take place. So I think it's about surviving disasters, but it's also about protecting rights, autonomy, and community ties. Community plays a very important role during these times. During these vulnerable times, we are far more vulnerable, and we need to think about how all of these policies should streamlined to be more decentralized and to be more accountable bottoms up. Yeah, with that I will conclude. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Puneet. It was very, very comprehensive. Thanks for highlighting. I think you've set a precedence for explaining the challenges, from a disability perspective, sharing real-time experiences of a real-time hazard, which is from Delhi, which is giving more, insights into the challenges that are being met by these people, and how at institutional level, at environmental level, at attitudinal level, at integration level and policy level, we need to make in some improvisations. I think very, very bright and rich insights, which will feed into us the next sessions. In the interest of time, I would request the next speakers to kindly adhere to the timing. I'd now like to introduce Ms. Poravi Srivastava, Assistant Manager Disability from Tech Mahindra Foundation. Ms.
Ma'am,
Srivastava? Yeah,
sorry to interrupt. Ms. Srivastava couldn't join us today.
okay.
So we can
Move to the
go to
next
Mr.
speaker.
Yes, Mr. Viswesh.
Okay. Okay. I'd now like to introduce Mr. Viswesh Sekhar, who's going to share us more information on bridging the gaps, access to services and social protection, exploring real-world gaps and solutions in healthcare, education, social security, and legal support for persons with disability. Mr. Viswesh Sekhar is a senior advocate with 27 years of experience specializing in disability rights and human rights law, a graduate of the National Law School of India, University, Bangalore. He holds an LLM in human rights and a PhD in law from Symbiosis International University, Pune. His doctoral research focused on reasonable accommodation and accessibility for persons with disability in India. He served as counsel in the PIL that led to Karnataka's RPD rules and advocated for COVID vaccination priority for persons with disability. Dr. Sekhar was part of the Indian NGO delegation to the UN's CRPD committee in Geneva and has collaborated with York University, Canada. His work has been published in economic and political weeklies, among others. He serves as a legal member of the local level committees under the National Trust Act. And regularly engages as a subject expert and resource person in disability rights. We're privileged to have you here. The floor is yours, Mr. Viswesh. Sekhar.
Good evening, all. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Good evening. Good evening. I am here to talk about one aspect of today's program, today's session, that is basically bridging the gap between what is there and what ought to be in the areas of social security, services, healthcare, pension, and other areas, legal aid and other areas. So first, we will look at what the Act says. According to me, the Act, the RPWD Act, the RPWD Act of 2016 is basically, according to me, a copy-paste of the UNCRPD. Now, my fundamental issue with that is the UNCRPD sets very high standards. Now, can we meet these high standards is the first question that occurs to me. Considering our limitations at various levels, can we meet the high standards set by the UNCRPD is the first question we have to answer. The next problem I have is the disability policy as a whole. The policy has always been cart before the horse. We should have had a policy before the Act or fine-tune the policy in relation to the Act at various stages when other acts are included or other acts are amended. All that should have been done in tandem with what were the requirements. This has not been done. These are two major shortcomings which in my personal opinion, have caused a gap between the cup and the lip when it comes to delivery of services and deliverables to the persons with disabilities in our country. Now, having said that, let us look first at Section 8 of the RPWD Act. I read for your benefit. Section 8, I will just read it for your benefit. Section 8 of the Act is about protection and safety. And it begins like this: persons with disabilities shall have equal protection and safety in situations of risks, armed conflict, humanitarian emergencies, and natural disasters. Now, when the RPWD Act, which is a beneficial and a special legislation, mandates equal protection of the subjects under it for equal protection, what has the government done to incorporate this equality, which it is mandated to do in other acts? I submit here that this has not been done. This is the root of the problem. If you look at disaster management policies, both at the national level and the state level, the word physically disabled, handicapped, or persons with disabilities, or whatever variant of the term the governments used across the board, be it Divyangjan or whatever the term is, whether we agree with it or not is a different part of the debate. But the very term is excluded from the policy itself, the disaster management policy. The National Disaster Management Policy, for example, uses the word specially abled only in two places in the policy. One is where it admits that people with disabilities are a higher vulnerability group. And second time the word specially abled is used is only when they talk about community-based rehabilitation in disaster management. Only in two places in the National Disaster Management Policy is the word specially abled used. Now, in the Karnataka state policy for disaster management, The word specially abled or differently abled is used only once in the entire policy, where it admits that persons with disability are a higher risk group. And along with other people like people who are below the poverty line, women and children, they are at a higher risk. Apart from this, there is nothing in the disaster policies of any of the states or of the nation itself that places people with disabilities at a priority level. That is another fundamental issue. The third fundamental issue I'm going to point out here is accessibility. As the previous speaker was talking about, accessibility is a major flaw in the entire system. Accessibility in terms of pure, not only for accessibility does not only mean ramps, as all we know. It may not be just wheelchair users that are suffering from lack of accessibility. The lack of sign language interpretation, the lack of other sources of accessibility are major drawbacks in times of disaster, which put the life of persons with disability at peril more than those of persons without disabilities. There is a clear discrimination between persons with disabilities and persons without disabilities in times of disaster, which goes against UNCRPD principles and the principles of the Act itself, which starts with the preamble that persons with disability shall be given equal treatment. This equal treatment has been thrown out of the window when it comes to disaster protection and disaster relief, DRR. In both these circumstances, persons with disabilities and their priority, which they ought to be given, has been thrown out of the window. This can be repaired only when policy is framed by persons who have a first-hand experience of disability and what persons with disabilities require. Unless policy is framed by persons who have had first-hand experience of disabilities, this problem will persist. And the only remedy I can see is policy being framed by persons who are suffering from disability and who have first-hand experience. As we all know, everybody has gone through disability once or more than once throughout their lives. Let us forget ableism debates. Every person has been disabled at some point in their lives. That lived experience has to reflect in policy when it comes to disaster risk reduction and management, when it comes to persons with disabilities as a first priority. This is what I would like to say now. Do I have more time or should I conclude? Do I have some more time?
No, I had a few questions to ask you
Yes,
when you
please,
talk
please.
about the implementation of the RPWD Act and the
Yes,
challenges that we are
yes,
facing. So,
yes.
is there any advocacy that has been done around this, and how has this response been? For
The
example, the earlier
yes,
speaker was talking about, the heat action plan does not
yes,
find a mention of disability anywhere. Similarly, the climate action plan does not find the mention of disability inclusion. So, how can we integrate disability in this act? And is there a chronological stepwise process that we, as a coordinated approach and mechanism, can, as a coalition, start putting out some of these projections in the form of a document which can then be taken up by relevant authorities? I was a little
yes,
inquisitive to
yes,
understand
yes.
this. Yeah.
Now, there is a two-pronged response that I would suggest to your question. The first is meet the policymakers and make them understand that a first-hand experience persons with disabilities is required in framing of policy. We have to approach policymakers and have change in policy through concentrated efforts from the disability sector itself. The next may be approaching a judicial fora and moving PILs for implementation of policy that is disabled friendly and has disability as a priority. That is the second line of attack or the second line of action we can take. But that has not been very effective so far simply because disaggregated data is not available as far as disability is concerned. We cannot really go to the court and say so many people are suffering. We still quote the 2011 census. Wherever we start talking about disability, the 2011 census in brackets, that figure is always there. That problem is still persisting. So moving a court is a second line of defense. The first line of attack should be to go to the policymaker and say, this is the thing that is required. I think that concentrated effort has to be made from the disability sector itself. That would be my response.
Thank you so much. This was quite informative, and I'm sure some of the participants who've joined us for this, session today have also been enlightened by some of the new things that have come to the table. And thanks for highlighting that this can be addressed through a double-pronged approach, and in which we have to directly, take it up with the policymakers, and then maybe the second round would be to go to the court. I would request all the participants, if you have any questions, kindly put them on the chat. At the end of the session, we're going to take a small Q&A session, just to that we do not want to break the the continuity of this session. But I would now like to kind of introduce Dr. Rufus Singh T, who's the lead program in CBM India, and who's going to take us through some of the vices from the ground. But just for you, all of us, to have a brief introduction about Dr. Rufus Singh, is a committed and experienced development professional, bringing over 15 years of expertise in both field practice and academic settings. He holds a PhD and master's degree in social work, along with a bachelor's degree in agriculture. His early work focused on post-tsunami recovery, promoting quality education, child rights, and community development. He has also played a key role in nurturing social entrepreneurship among individuals with and without disabilities. He has served in academic and administrative roles at esteemed institutions, including the Madras School of Social Work and College of Social Work, Nirmala Niketan, Mumbai. He currently oversees multiple projects, including Disability Inclusive Disaster Risk Reduction and Inclusive Carbon Mitigation Initiative in Uttarakhand and Livelihood Development Program in Uttar Pradesh, Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, and Karnataka. Blending academic knowledge with grassroots engagement, he has contributed significantly to areas such as aging, migration, climate change adaptation. His work has been widely published in reputable academic journals. A very, very impressive profile. Thank you so much for taking time out to be with us for this session, Dr. Singh, and I hand it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sphere India, for having me for this wonderful discussion and a great forum and a wonderful co-panelist to listen to all the wisdom. Thank you. I hope I'm audible. If you could also confirm that.
Yes, you're audible.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just going to talk about some of the field level, understanding and the voices from the field. How this DADRR, what we have already discussed, disability inclusive disaster risk reduction is practiced in one of the project, which I'll be taking you to that. Is it okay if I share the screen? I can take you through PPT.
Yes, I think you have the.
Okay, yeah.
You can share the screen.
Is it
It's
visible?
visible, Mr. Singh, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So I think the previous speaker is talking about exactly we are still relying on 2011 census. It's very well taken. Just to give you a glimpse of the place where I'm just going to discuss about is Uttarakhand. So just to have an understanding about the population again with the 2011 census with 1,85,000. Okay, so we are talking about this approach and the entire activities which I'll be talking about. Disability inclusive disaster risk reduction. Can inclusion be practiced in all aspects, in mitigation, in preparation or response and recovery, and also in pre-impact or emergency restoration, reconstruction, capacity building? And it by talking, it's in many aspects, it may be very feasible, but when it comes to field level, it is really a challenging task while we ensuring inclusion at ground level, especially at a time of disaster. Key features, those who are very new to this concept, the key features of this DADRR is, which includes including persons with disabilities, the entire aspect of the DARR, which includes in planning, are they really representing the planning? The families, the individuals, the OPD organizations, are they really actively part of this entire decision-making process? Because this should be a bottom-up approach. So then only this DRR become very, very successful. In all these processes, including accessible early warning systems, whether the alerts are designed to reach everyone, is this, the machine itself accessible for all set of disabilities? So it's larger, questions there, because we don't have, even if we have adequate technology, we may not have adequate resources or finance or other, facilities to ensure that it can be reached to the common public. So there are multiple challenges, but to understand in a larger context, there are other aspects of features, including for DARR, including barrier-free evacuation plans. While evacuation, can we have a barrier-free environment? Because disaster itself, make the place very unorganized. So how do we do this evacuation which is barrier-free? So how do we really make, ramps, tactile in all these situations? So once we get into this entire process, we will understand the magnitude is so huge to work on this area. Capacity building of persons with disabilities, are they trained and empowered to become responders and leaders in DRR initiatives? Disability, often we say that people who are so-called normal will go and do evacuation. So instead of that, they are all self-empowered to be a leaders in DRR initiatives. Disability data in risk assessments. Do we have disaggregated data of personal disabilities in all localities, which is vulnerable for a disaster, or are they likely to be excluded? Assistive devices and support services to be also part of this DADRR, whether we have wheelchairs or other hearing aids and appliances. During emergencies, how this can be accessible in the shelters. All these aspects has to be looked into. Inclusive recovery and reconstruction. During recovery and reconstruction also, whether this process was also an inclusive process, be it a livelihood post-disaster or preparatory pre-disaster, how are we making these infrastructures or services more inclusive? And why it matters? Because persons with disabilities are disproportionately affected by disasters, and they lack accessible information. Infrastructure or social support can leave them more vulnerable. DADRR promotes equity, dignity, and resilience. And often we use the word equality. Now, I think it's more important that equity is, because when we talk about the classified 21 set of disabilities, it is, we can't put a law for everyone same and say we are treating you equal. So equity stands very tall, because each person is unique, and we need to identify their own needs and their own support system to be addressed. Okay. So DARR promotes equity, dignity, and resilience. And it aligns with international commitments like Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, UNCRPD, and the SDGs. And the special focus which I'm going to share today is strengthening resilience and adaptive capacity to climate-related hazards and natural disasters in Tehri Garhwal district of Uttarakhand, where we have implemented one of the projects. This is the project location where we have worked in Belangana block of Tehri Garhwal in Uttarakhand. It's at a very higher altitude with a population of 992, and has a with 15 panchayats we worked in this area, and it is a area is vulnerable for disasters, and it has a more requirement for to work with the person with disabilities. The stakeholder engagements and management in this the entire process. How are we going to engage the different stakeholders to ensure inclusion is ensured. So in that, the first thing is the local government, gram panchayats and the block development offices, which involve representatives in training, mock drills, and capacity building sessions. So we need to involve the existing, local governance, the available gram sabhas, gram panchayats, all panchayat raj institutions, PRIs to be capacity built, and OPD groups to be formed, organization for persons with disabilities, and the regular meetings with them and capacity build them, preparing them, and often, the decision should come from the OPDs, what they need and how it should be. Okay, so that level of intervention is required. Then a village and school disaster management committees were formed. I'm talking mainly in focusing on the project level experience. So we had a village disaster management committees, we called as PDMCs, and school disaster management committees were formed to ensure that this inclusion is practiced at the village level and the school. Health and social services are also taken into consideration, partnering with the hospital and various services with primary health center and the Anganwadi centers and the centers where A&M staffs where they can also be taking part in ensuring the inclusion. Stakeholder engagements. Again, the key departments, including agriculture, horticulture, and forestry departments, were also included to promote climate resilient farming practices and watershed conservation in spring water catchment areas. Educational institutions were taken into consideration while working on this DRR training and also making them aware at the younger stage. They are also vulnerable. Children are also one of the vulnerable groups, so they are also targeted at schools. Policy advocacy and legislative engagement, which includes the government departments, various government departments, and overcoming resistance through relationship building with each and every stakeholders within the existing village and society. So they were also networked. And some of the photographs, including how we have done this, you can see the members are trained on first aid. I'm showing only few photographs for our interaction. And then livelihood basket assessment was also done for them to have a livelihood plan. Okay. These are some of the initiatives with regard to accessibility, keeping accessibility in mind while doing evacuation. These emergency shelters were made accessible. And DIR training was also given to the self-help group members, or we call it as inclusive self-help group members, and the VDMCs. All of them are, part of the DIR training. The DRR kit distribution is also given to. They were also oriented on that. These are all meetings. Regular meetings happens to ensure that they are always prepared to face any disasters. So task force meeting, village disaster management plan, and along with the expert team, the members of the village disaster management committee will make plans. These are all bottom-up approach at the ground level, working with the community. So again, the entire planning. So community is actively engaged in this. So it has happened across these 15 panchayats. So forming groups is one of the approach, including this early warning system is also encouraged through megaphones. Community preparedness through mock drill exercise, first aid, search and rescue training, emergency shelters made available, follow-up meeting. These are some of set of initiatives. Apart from that, we have also joined with the Uttarakhand government in making this DIDRR handbook, and this was successfully released. We also work with our collaborating agencies. You can see an organization called KSS, Karuna Social Service Society. We worked with them, and the book was released. Community-driven practices and some of the key achievements. I'm just giving a glimpse of these numbers. We are able to train 400 government and community members in disaster preparedness with a focus on disability-inclusive disaster response, and established and operationalized 15 village and 15 school DIDRR committees, updated plans of emergency shelters and regular drills, trained 185 VDMC members on DIDRR to help Gram Panchayats towards the VDMP and integrate into the Gram Panchayat development plan. Developed the early warning system in 15 Gram Panchayats and provided 15 megaphones. These are all some of the disaster preparedness activities. And we also ensure that we need to have a comprehensive plan, disaster, apart from the disaster mitigation and preparedness. The contributing factor is also climate change part. So the adaptation part also we work, where we have implemented adaptive measures of organic farming, watershed activities, resulting in 800 families adopting sustainable farming practices. Then planting trees and digging trenches. This is based on the requirement in the particular geography, where watershed shed activities of water conservations was very much required. And even the flash floods or flooded water also, we need to channelize that. So a lot of activities, groundwork to be done there. Then 300 smokeless chulhas, stoves, solar lanterns, to ensure that this climate change is also a contributing factor also we need to mitigate. Install some water purifiers in emergency shelters, in halls and schools. Street lights are made available. Handbook, which I just I shared that photograph of releasing a handbook on DIDRR along with the Uttarakhand government. And the support system, while we working there, it is also essential that the aids and appliances also to be sufficiently reached to persons with disabilities. So, and also training is given to them. So we can trained 30 master trainers in sustainable agriculture. 240 persons with disabilities and families are getting nutritious vegetables. And we also started an IFPO, formed an IFPO where they were able to, they are empowered to do their operations, especially on the agricultural activities. We will also create a 15 OPDs, Organization for Persons with Disabilities, and which gives them a lot of empowerment on decision making, and where they'll be able to advocate along with the government. Their rights are ensured. So that empowerment is also very much focused in this project. Then the income generation activities were also conducted through some of the livelihood activities, encouraging small petty shops, goat rearing, both farm-based, off-farm and non-farm activities were encouraged to ensure that the support mechanism is also in place. Some of the innovative innovation and initiatives is practiced. It's also recommended. Digital data collection, which is often accessible for person with disability. Individualized family disaster management plans focusing on personal disability, accessibility, safety, and outline tailored risk and mitigation strategies. The project linked each village to the local meteorological department for daily weather updates and early warnings via mobile apps and community boards. These are all were ensured in this project phase. Inclusive training programs using visual aids and as a simulation drills. Accessible livelihood units for economic resilience. The project established livelihood units like petty shops, carpentry, and goat rearing. They see to that some of the features required were addressed. Formation of disability inclusive farmers group, farmer producer organization was also formed, and climate resilient agriculture training is also given. some of the glimpse of some of the activities which you can see people who are trained in the climbing, lifting it from the one place to another place. A lot of climate resilient agricultural practices. Water, how water can be shed to flooded water can be shed to for their own consumption purpose. What these areas are, even livelihood, the chulhas. So we see a strategy while we are trying to address a problem on disaster. So especially inclusion to be ensured. Most our interventions on agricultural mainly focusing on organic farming. So and in all farming or all beneficiaries, our approach is that significant number of persons with disabilities are part of each intervention. That is mandated, and that is how we have a understanding with the groups. And we work with groups primarily. Our approach is that we form groups in the community, be it all social collectives are inclusive, that is mandated. Mainly OPDs are very much a focused activity, and we have inclusive self-help groups, inclusive village disaster management committees will be there, inclusive groups, and the school level children are part of committees. So committees and groups are formed at various levels to ensure that during such disasters, immediate responding can be very quick, and they can mitigate at the earliest. Just to share one of the case studies where one incident happened, a cloudburst in Jankiali village, where it was in 31st 2024, and it was a huge sudden cloudburst, and the community immediately responded to that. Okay, this is the scenario of the cloudburst where you are seeing in that particular village that the damage happened. Some of them, very few of them, they died, and many of them got injured. You are seeing a crowd where the chief minister has come and looking into that. And what is the impact? Three of them are found to be they died in this particular incident, and so one hotel got washed away, 5 houses damaged, one bridge, pond, and children's playground damaged, 5 hectares of agricultural land destroyed. These are all, again, the implications are coming there in livelihood part, their own psychosocial well-being, all their personal well-being is affected. Over 1,322 people got affected, and the rescue operations were in place. Community volunteers rushed to the site. This preparedness really helped them to really, manage that situation. They navigated a fast-flowing stream to reach the hotel site. Of course, it's challenging, but I think what ensured, what really, this entire exercise really helped us to understand is that preparedness matters a lot. Okay, the more emphasis on preparedness often we need to have regular drills, preparation of the committees, regular meetings, mock drills, at all levels, including the government level, to be in place. So when other team members were rushing to the spot, relief and coordination efforts were, started. They're working on the relief and coordination immediately with the district disaster management unit, SDRF. Then the village disaster management committee fall in place now. So since we have a very effective this system in place, they were able to connect to the government and jointly work on that. Timely alerts have saved 260 families, and mobilization of trained volunteers, effective use of DIDRR tools, megaphone, emergency contact. These helped to reach out to people immediately. Okay. Early warning saved lives. What is the lessons we learn? So we need to focus on early warning, and what best technology we can include in this. Interagency coordination is crucial. Community training pays off. So all community level collectives, OPD groups, inclusive self-help groups, or VDMCs or SDMCs, school level, all these training has really paid during that particular scenario. Preparedness drills are effective, volunteers are valuable, disability inclusive planning is very, very essential. Okay. So after the drills, after the interventions, these emergency plans got, if people have understood that, it's really, really useful. Often it is community driven, community participation is, the success is the community participation, is community driven. Community, came together. We are all, the entire agencies, the organizations are all facilitators. But when disaster comes, people have to face the consequence. Some of the success stories of some people who are become champions. So I'm just sharing out Chandan Singh from Titrana village in Deri Garhwal. He has a vision impairment and has a socioeconomically, backwardness challenges. Despite that, he, took part in many of the project activities where he got benefited in training, cultivating organic millets and vegetables, and started his enterprise and increased his income. So that's a success story of him. Apart from that, he became a champion and he started spreading the DADR knowledge, and he was impacting others' life very positively. So that was his story of Chandan Singh. And another person named Kiri Devi. She also has a physical impairment, and she is also having, she also overcame social and economic challenges. She also took part very actively in the project and received some of the training and some benefits. But one thing, she became a champion of OPD, activities, and she's one of champions. She started leading that, and she has started involving people. So she became a role model for many of the other members in the OPD team. So she has made significant impact in others' life also. So that's how the project has made people as leaders who started impacting others' life. Some, of course, this may not be successful at 100%, but there are a lot of challenges. The project struggle with the limited government funding, staffing, infrastructure. We can keep on listing it out. Roads are not accessible. People doesn't understand what is accessibility, and accessibility audit and all. It's a new phenomena for many of the remote locations. Inconsistent in coordination among stakeholders led to overlaps, gaps, and inefficiencies in active implementation. Limited local policy support for DADR hindered. Reaching out to a very community which is vulnerable or also backward in many of the aspects. Talking about an issue like this, it really takes a lot of time. But because of our collective, social collectives and group formation, people-led movements, that made it a real great success. Thank you. That's it from my end.
Thank you so much, Dr. Singh. This was really, really very comprehensive. And, the reflections that you've shared, as you've yourself said, it's a lot to do with preparedness. It's a lot of locally led, community owned initiative. It's a lot to do with your presence at those communities from a very long time, because of which you've been able to make the indelible mark and been able to show the impact that you have taken us through. So while we were discussing on some of the challenges right from the first panelist, who gave a first-hand account of two disabled people who are grappling with some challenges vis-a-vis these disasters. He talked about some of the challenges around heat wave, and he did give some challenges around accessibility, safety, participation, dignity, language, and all of those. So you yourself in your last slide have mentioned that there were challenges around policy, around coordination, and around adherence to some of the um, accepted standards or policies. For example, when we talk about disaster response, we go by the minimum standards of response and relief, which are being spelled out by SPEAR. We may not be doing it in letter and spirit, but at least we try to follow some of those sectoral standards. But as at the outset, I started off with ADGAP, which is a consortium which talks about age and disability capacity building program, right? And then we have inclusion standards, we have charters, we have an IASC standard which has been followed and embraced by many countries in terms of at least going to them and coming, as Puneet was also talking about, if there could be there is a policy gap and how to bridge that. And then we had Viswesh also talking about how we can do some dialogue with the policymakers, or we can go to the next level in terms of, so I wanted to understand from CBM, because you've been doing this from a very long time. So what could be the chronological steps or some of the 2 or 3 important approaches whereby we could, talk about the standards? Because if the climate action plans do not talk about disability inclusion, so the states and districts and block levels will not talk about it. It has to be somehow incorporated in the policy documents. And then only if there is some advocacy which is required, engagement with relevant ministries which is required, we can always take some baby steps towards that. But since the participation is not there, since the attitude is not there, in terms of understanding the language, the terminology, and I think we have to take some baby steps towards achieving that particular sensitization. And then it's more about coordination, capacity building, integration and mainstreaming, and giving some policy recommendations on this. What would be your, take on this? After that, I would request the other 2 panelists also to share their insights before we open it out for any external questions. Over to you, Dr. Singh.
Thank you for your understanding on that topic which I shared. And I think you're talking about the policy level issues which should we take it to the government. What is the next level of approach? I think I strongly urge multi-pronged approach really facilitates all issues. Multiple stakeholders are there, so we cannot have one single approach, which is not feasible. We need to have all aspects into consideration. Entire thing government cannot do everything. So we need to also see from bottom-up approach. So we need to have a multi-pronged approach. One from the community. There are communities which have, from person with disabilities. There are among that there are different set of issues are there, which has to be within each individual level. We need to go and see, are they really their issues are addressed? Because it comes to person with disabilities, the issues are very, very different. Person with deaf blindness is something very different. How do they perceive disability or disaster? For them, the cloudburst will have a different experience. Persons with physical impairment has having a different experience. So this is I would say, an unresearched area, and we have not even delved much deeper into that. Each set of impairment or any set of neurodiversity issues are very, very unique. And that we need to go to that level of understanding. But when you really try to approach, you need to also have a multi-pronged, multi-departmental, multi-sectoral approach, which is very, very essential. Because one set of livelihood, when we go with some agriculture and other departments, other set of livelihood is connected to forestry livelihood. Then other sector is the tourism part, this location which is concerned. So tourism sector should be roped in. So multi-sectoral, multi-departmental approach is very, very essential.
Thank you so much, Dr. Singh.
Yeah.
I would request the other 2 speakers if they would want to add anything before we open it out for the last set of questions. Puneet, Viswesh.
No, I'd just like to say that we have to talk to policymakers make them understand that the needs of the disabled are different, but stand at the same footing as people who are non-disabled. That equality should be driven home. That persons with disability are equal to others. Nothing about us, nothing about us. That phrase has to be driven into them. Equality has to be driven into them. They have to make policy with persons with disability in mind at all levels and at all times. I think that is very important. We have to target policymakers first. After they make the policy, we can look at judicial remedies, we can look at other remedies. But that is post hoc ergo propter hoc. First, target the policymaker. Tell him that disability and ability are two sides of the same coin, and persons with disability are equal to other people. Equality is at the helm of affairs. Equality, equity, however you put it, that is at the helm of things. They have to understand that and then frame policy. I think that is very important. We have to drive towards that as a community.
Thank you so much for reiterating the equal participation of
Yeah.
the disabled people in the design of the, the main program and implementation. Puneet, over to you quickly, in case you have any last concluding words.
No.
Okay, we have some questions on the chat box. Krupa, if you can please help us with the, unmuting some of the participants who would like to put in any questions to the panelists.
Yes, ma'am, we can support with that. Anybody with queries can raise their hand and we'll help in unmuting.
There are a few questions in the chat box, I guess.
Yes, ma'am, we can go ahead with the questions in the chat box and we'll wait for other participants to ask if any.
There's a question from Anandi. I have a question for PWD policy, plan, program, and guideline in disaster management, lacking how government sectors, central and state district work. Anybody would like to respond to this question? The question is not very clear. Anandi, would you like to unmute your mic and ask the question? So what you're trying to say is, yeah.
I'm asking for this state level and central and district how to work on to for the policy plan program to the leadership responsibility.
Some of the panelists have already responded by saying
and then
that there has to be a multi-pronged approach, a multi-departmental approach, a multi-sectoral approach. So we will have to parallelly look at engaging all layers of, the government and the civil society and work together towards bringing in sensitization and awareness on these issues, which you at the community level, at the district level, at the state level, can work together with all your other, practitioners and partners and advocates who are there. Anything you would like to add, Dr. Singh?
I would like to add that there has to be some coordination between all of these agencies, because I think I don't know, but I see lack of communication and lack of coordination when we talk about all of these institutions. And also there is question which is very interesting from Marni, that is there any somewhere that we could find information such as that mentioned by me, that which countries include disability in their climate plans and which don't. So I think that is a very interesting question, and that is a homework for me and for all the listeners who are interested in this, because we need to point out organizations and we need to point out the countries which doesn't include, and also congratulate the countries who are spearheading the conversation. So I think it's a very good thought for the day for me. Thank you.
Of course, a
Mandi.
very good question. Somehow I missed it. Just for your information, we are working in Bangladesh and there are some steps taken towards equality and inclusion. wherein we are directly intervening with some ministries, from the laws and policies, and trying to work around, inclusion around, by engaging relevant stakeholders. So that is one that I know of, but it'll be a good exercise for us, and we will feedback, through SPARE, on which could be these countries. Thank you so much for your questions. Are there any more questions? I'm not.
Yes, ma'am. There is a question by Rucha Thakur towards Mr. Rufus, Dr. Rufus, on
Yes.
how this process ensures inclusiveness.
Yeah.
It was a question during his presentation.
Okay, I think she's talking about inclusiveness, how to ensure that. I think it's by speaking probably it's a easy thing, but when it ensuring at all levels, no doubt there are a lot of challenges, but we need to agree that it is also we need to make sufficient efforts to include inclusion at all levels, including the preparedness, the the recovery or reconstruction in all aspects. What we do, how do we do is, even when we do identification of beneficiary list, there is a significant person with disabilities is collected, identified. And we ensure that all benefits without person with disabilities, no activities will be done. In all aspects, that is what we ensure. Okay, in leadership or in group formation, or even if we provide for any organic farming, it should be inclusive. Be it goatry, it should be inclusive. Across, not only for this project, across CBM projects, this is the policy. So it takes time, it takes sufficient, it needs training to understand each person's requirement is entirely different. It has its own challenge. Each activity or livelihood may not be accessible for everyone. So we need to make reasonable accommodation, some support systems to be done, some infra has to be developed. It is a very challenging thing which I think we are discussing, but which needs an entire set of multi-pronged support systems to be there. Once it is this understanding is developed, I think we will be able to take on. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Singh. And just to also add that immediately after emergencies, one very important exercise is the joint needs assessment, which SPARE also kind of, works with the different stakeholders from this at the state level, at the district level. Most of the problems arise because of the data disaggregation, which is not captured the way it ought to be. Because if there is a Dalit, and she's an elderly, and she's a woman also, there are intersectionalities, and most of the time the civil society organizations who mount their responses, their targeting has to be in such a way that those should be the people who are targeted. We as Change Alliance do exactly that our targeting parameters are posed on the vulnerabilities, but then when we cascade down, there are many disasters where we have responded specifically targeting persons with disability and elderly people, because we see that a lot of other people are targeting the other vulnerable sections. Some are targeting children, some are targeting some other vulnerable. So there has to be, and I think SPARE can also play a role in setting out the targeting criterions also for different organizations as per their mandates, because some organizations may work on different target audiences, which would also look into the coordination point that you had just raised. Second would be on this, once we are doing the execution, so how are we ensuring that in our response efforts, for example, we are giving cash transfer in interventions. So how are we ensuring that, the persons with disabilities are also involved and engaged, because they come with their own challenges. So how are they involved and engaged right from the, the beneficiary selection, from the community prioritization to actually the designing of it and the execution and all of that. So similarly for other sectors as well, as Dr. Singh was talking about multi-sector, engagement and collaborations and coordination. Thank you so much, everybody. It has been a very enlightening, insightful. I see a few people have put out raised their hands. Is it?
Yes, sorry to interrupt. We'll have one last question from the hand raised. Mr. Abdul Kader, you can ask your question now.
Good afternoon, and I am can you hear me?
Yes, yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Okay, good afternoon, and I have to participant for the past 5 years in the sphere, and we are doing the emergency communication for the disaster time. So we have to handle with the disability services and senior citizen and women also. The three participant, three are we have to gathering to a lot of things. So I insist how to we do the disability especially for. So we have to collect and gathering the vulnerable analysis basis, and we have to download the disaster management plan in every district and every state, and we have to gathering the people list and the information, and easily to go inform the situation and to the help, and easily to do handle with. And another thing, we have to announce to the SMS and something like that, and senior citizen also. So we have to we can't eliminate the disaster. We have to reduce the damages for the common and the disability and senior citizen also. To do like that, so I shortly I have to talk that because of the time limit. And so I am satisfied the participants communication, the Hannah, Hensi, and Puneet Singh, and another Rufus Singh also. And I notified all the things. And anyway, in further meeting, and I have to more support and help and with you. This is a info, and I have no question, and I am satisfied. Thank you very much for the chance to them to Kripa Lakshmi and also the co-host. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, participants, for all your questions and observations. And we also have observations. Today, we had a very rich and good quality of participants, although it was less than we expected. But I am very happy participants are giving us good feedback already. And we have comment from a very renowned activist. And yes. So we are in the end of the session. Since Dr. Heena had to step out, I am taking over to give very thanks to you. I am very happy that today's session was a very good kickstart. We are planning to have a series of similar sessions covering all the different marginalized groups. And we look forward to all your feedback. The presentation will be sent via email along with the feedback link. You can also give your feedback on further sessions and topics that you would like to be taken by us. And also the recording of today's session will be uploaded on YouTube, which can be used to disseminate. Thank you so much to all the panelists, and thank you so much to all the participants. We'll see you in another session of Sphere India Academy.